And welcome to Whiskey Politics. I'm Dave Sussman, your host and purveyor here at davesussman.com. Find us at all of our platforms, including the independent.io, the Range Broadcasting Network. You can find us on YouTube, as well as all of your favorite podcast applications, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can find us on Stitcher, Google Play, and the Ricochet Network. How you feeling, folks? You exhausted yet? We're here. This is it. It's on us. We're ready to start counting votes. Oh my goodness. This has been like an emotional battering ram. You know, every 10 minutes, I'm positive, I'm optimistic. And then the next 10 minutes, oh my goodness, voter fraud. It's going to be crazy. It's going to go down to litigation, 71, 79 days of hell, whatever it's going to be until the inauguration. I'm hearing people talking about it's going to make Bush v. Gore look like patty cakes. I mean, I don't know. I do know this, that if you haven't voted yet and you're so disgusted by everything and you're just one of those people that say a pox in both houses, folks, you got to vote. You got to vote. Every single vote is going to be counted, and every single vote will count, because especially when you come down to the swing districts and the swing states, it's all going to come down to a handful of votes. I've read more than a few articles that are saying it may come down to 200 votes in one district in Pennsylvania. I mean, that's how close this thing may be. So if you haven't voted yet, please do. I vote on Election Day. I've been voting every Election Day, including primaries, in person since 1992. That was the first election that I was legally allowed to vote, because I became naturalized in 1989. And so that for me was President Clinton. Yeah, I voted for Clinton, 1992. I'm sharing that with you. Don't hold it against me. That's the first and the last time I ever voted for a presidential candidate from the D Party. And to talk about all this and a whole lot more, I'm delighted to welcome back to the show Dinesh D'souza, who is a New York Times #1 best-selling author of over 15 different books and counting. He is an award-winning filmmaker. You've seen his films: Hillary's America, Obama 2016, Death of a Nation. His latest film, we're going to be talking about, Trump Card, is now available on video on demand. You can find it everywhere. We'll talk about that. He is a public intellectual, a scholar. And, one of the things a lot of people don't know about Dinesh D'souza, he worked in the Reagan White House fresh out of Dartmouth as a policy analyst. What were you doing right out of college? I was working at Red Lobster, okay? The guy's brilliant. Dinesh quickly became known as a major force in public policy. You've seen him all over the country, across media, speaking tours and engagements, debates. And if you haven't seen him debate people at some of his speaking engagements, you can go down that wormhole on YouTube very easily. You need to watch this stuff. Anyway, it's a delight to welcome back to the show Dinesh D'souza.
Thank you. Nice to be on the show.
So first of all, congratulations on this new movie, your latest movie, Trump Card. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see each other again at one of your red carpet events that swept the nation. We did last year and the last few years as well. Give us a quick overview of Trump Card.
All my earlier movies have been in the theater. This one is straight to on demand. But the cool thing is it's in 330 million homes, and you can watch it really easily by just going to Amazon Prime or Apple iTunes or Google or YouTube. The theme of the movie is socialism. It's based on my book called United States of Socialism. And I think that's the end point for the Democratic left. That's the direction in which they want to take America. So the movie explores the ideas and the tactics of the socialist left. It talks about why they're evil, who's behind it, and how we can work with Trump to stop them.
So I got to see the movie, and it's a fantastic, fantastic film, just like quite frankly, all of your films have just been getting better and better over the years, and they're all been really good. One of the things that really hit me very early in the film was how little our kids in the next generation know about socialism. They don't know about the Russian Revolution. They don't know about the 100 million people killed. Is this just a blight on our education system? Has this been by design? What do you think on that?
I think that we have seen the domination by a progressive movement of academia. It's also true of the media. And these are people who believe in collectivism, the centralized state. One historian early in the 20th century pointed out that communism, fascism, and progressivism were all cousins in the sense that they are all moving away from the idea of the individual, the family, the church, the community, and toward the idea of the centralized state. So progressivism has ultimately been lying about socialism, not teaching people about more sins of omission than sins of commission. And remember, I mean, there's also a humdrum socialism that is also a disaster. I grew up under in India in the 1960s and 70s. Now, the left will say today, you know, we don't want authoritarian socialism, we want democratic socialism. Well, I grew up under democratic socialism. And I remember it, my family had a ration card. You could only buy so much rice, so much cooking oil, so much sugar. We were on a 7-year waiting list to get a phone. So to me, socialism is represented by scarcity, by misery. India, of course, at that time was like the begging bowl of the world. And only when India began to move away from socialism did it begin to do better. So I'm speaking in part out of direct experience, an experience that occurred at a time when I wasn't even thinking politically. I could just see with my own 2 eyes that this system sucked.
Socialism sucks. I mean, it does. And, you know, we see Turning Point. They've got T-shirts all over the place on that. You know, but the thing is that they're selling it as if it's some form of new breed of socialism that, oh, well, this time it's going to be different, right?
Right. I mean, the funny thing is socialism was discredited worldwide, partly because it was seen as a form of slavery. I mean, that's why Hayek titled his book, The Road to Serfdom. Yeah. Solzhenitsyn portrayed the Gulag. You know, George Orwell talked about the tyrannical dimension of socialism. Now, imagine if someone were to say today, you know, slavery was kind of a good idea, but the implementation always failed. It always fell short. And this time we're going to get slavery right. People would be like, are you insane? Are you nuts? Yeah. But that is exactly what they do say about socialism. This time we're going to get it right.
So where did we fail our kids? Was this a design? Was this created in a lab? Was it the Frankfurt School? Is it what are we looking at here as far as a trajectory? Because I see this, that, you know, we get to a certain age and we think to ourselves, when you're young, you're dumb and you're liberal. And when you're, you know, you graduate college and you start earning a paycheck, you become a conservative. Winston Churchill, you know, under 40, over 40. But this generation is different. They've all graduated. Dinesh, they're in our media. They're in our academia. They're in our corporations. What happened in the last generation where they didn't convert and wake up?
I want to give a sort of unorthodox analysis, which departs from this normal line of thinking. It is ultimately, I mean, any moral scheme is always appealing when concealed under it is a sort of self-interested or theft scheme. And I think socialism fits the bill perfectly. And here's what I mean. If somebody were to say to you, go to your neighbor's house, you know, eat out of his refrigerator, take the fruit off his trees, lift the art off his walls, take whatever curios you like, bring him over to your house, you'd feel bad about doing that. You go, man, I mean, I'm not a thief. You know, I'm not going to do that. But now imagine if the socialist comes to you and says, hey, listen, pal, you know all that stuff in your neighbor's house, it really belongs to you. And you go, what? Really? How? And he goes, well, it's not that he came and took it from you. His great-great-great-grandfather stole it from your great-great-great-grand. So these stolen goods have been passed down through the generations. So here's the good news. We, the state, the socialist state, will go take the stuff from him. Obviously, we'll keep some of it for ourselves, and we'll give the rest of it to you. So think of what's going on here. Socialism is recruiting an ordinary guy into a theft scheme, but by making him feel good about it. In other words, it's annihilating his conscience. It's removing the obstacle. Hey, I don't want to be a thief. And it's telling him, listen, not only can you rip off your neighbor, but you can feel like you're a morally wonderful person. You can march behind this banner of social justice. This, to me, is the real moral evil of socialism.
Do you think that social preening, if you will, is more an emotional argument than a logical one?
No, I think it actually operates at that very deep level of the bowels where hypocritical motives are normally concealed. Because people like to think well of themselves. People don't like to think, hey, listen, think of some union guy. No union guy goes, you know, I just want higher wages. I want to take as much as I can. They go, oh, no, I'm fighting for my rights. You know, that's why it was so important for Obama to keep talking about the fair share. Never once did he give us a kind of a philosophical explanation of what is is fair? How do you decide what's fair? Where do you draw the line? At what point would you, a liberal, be a conservative and say these tax rates are enough? How much should the rich pay? No discussion of any of that. Why? Because he's not concerned with that. What he's trying to do is make people feel good about putting their hand into somebody else's pocket.
In your film Trump Card, you have AOC, Che Guevara of our time, prominently featured. And I see her. She's 29 years old. She's a child. She hasn't been married. She hasn't raised a family. She hasn't run a business. She's never made a payroll in her life. Yet she wants to come in and restructure complex economic systems. Why do you have her so prominently featured through the film? Do you feel that she is, in essence, the next thing for this Democrat Party to hoist upon America? Is she going to be playing a major role in our future politics here?
Well, I think that both AOC and I would also add Ilhan Omar are kind of the faces of the new socialism and the attractive faces of it. And they have special things kind of going for them. Bernie Sanders is a little bit long in the tooth. The problem with Bernie Sanders is he's kind of the old, unreconstructed type of socialist, right? If he has to go on his honeymoon, he doesn't go to Oslo or Copenhagen. He goes to Moscow. You know, bread lines are a good idea. I mean, this is a bit too much. Right. But AOC is kind of hip. She's, you know, there she is in her, you know, making a cappuccino while she's talking about economics. Now, her economic talk is a nullity. You know, she goes, you know, I was learning the other day from, you know, Milton Keynes. You know, she's confusing Milton Friedman and John Maynard Keynes, who are opposite ends of the spectrum. You know, you have a certified dummy here, but kind of a dummy that speaks with a sort of affable, disarming style. Now, Ilhan Omar, a darker, more diabolical figure. And what I mean by that is that she gets protection from all her corrupt schemes, even more than Biden. Why? Because she's sort of the ultimate victim. Think of it. She's a person of color. She's a Muslim. She wears the hijab. She's from the desert. She's a woman. So she's sort of like grabbed onto the bottom rung of the ladder. You know, I'm a quadruple victim. And so as a result, the media rushes to protect her. She's been in campaign finance scandals, sex scandals, paying off her lover scandals, marrying her brother scandals. But all of it seems to fizzle out because she's sort of the ultimate protected figure on the Democratic left.
You know, it's fascinating to me that Ilhan Omar is, as anti-Semitic as she is still playing such a powerful role in American politics. And, you know, some people are saying, and I want to talk about the election with you in just a moment, some people are saying Minnesota could flip because of Ilhan Omar. Others are saying, yeah, not so quick. She's got a tremendous amount of support. I think it's the 5th district of Minnesota that she's in. How did we end up with an Ilhan Omar, somebody that is so vehemently anti-American and anti-Semitic, being a major face in the Democrat Party?
Well, I mean, think about it this way. The Ilhan Omar is she's an immigrant who's almost an anti-immigrant. First of all, a lot of these immigrants didn't come as immigrants. She came as a refugee, a completely different matter. Somebody like me is part of an immigrant group that came to America because we looked at America and we chose America. We're like, we want to come to America. We like the entrepreneurial spirit. We like the pioneer idea. When I was a kid and I would watch things like cowboy movies, it wasn't really about the cowboys and the Indians at all. It was about a certain type of American sensibility, the individual. The fight of good versus evil, the idea of forming communities, the idea of being sustained by faith in difficult circumstances, love of country. So this is really why the voluntary immigrant comes here. But then you've got the ungrateful immigrant, the Ilhan Omar, who pretends, I love America. But, you know, then is that next sentence, I want to fundamentally transform America. Now imagine if you were to say that to your wife, you know, I love you, but I want to fundamentally transform you. You know, your whole history up to now has been a series of failures, but your future might be a little better than your past. I mean, this would be catastrophic for any relationship. And yet this is exactly what these people do when they're talking about their country.
Dinesh, I'm also an immigrant like you. I came here as a kid, didn't have much choice in the matter, from London, England, came here in the 1970s. And my father, you know, he saw socialism in England at the time. It was before Thatcher, and everybody was leaving. Everybody was going. I've got family now across the world, Switzerland, Australia, obviously in the States. And so when you have this experiment that you talk about in your movie Trump Card called socialism, which historically speaking, you can't point to one successful experiment. I mean, you know, people point to Denmark and Sweden right now. They're moving more conservative. I mean, you know, they really are. They're trying to figure out how to deal with healthcare issues and things like this as well by going to the private sector. Let me ask you. Go ahead.
You know, one interesting tidbit is that the Indian independence leaders got their socialism from England.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys like Nehru, they studied at Oxford and Cambridge. They studied under the Fabian socialists, professors like Harold Laski and so on. And then they imported those ideas to India. Now, this, you know, deprived a whole generation of Indians of their birthright until the Indians began to see the light. And the Indians only began to see the light because they looked over their shoulder and they saw China is doing better.
Yeah.
And they're like, wow, they're moving away from socialism. We better do the same thing. So the Indians didn't read Adam Smith. They just sort of followed example, if you will.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, while the left talks about Scandinavia, the Scandinavians never demonize the rich. Their whole idea is we're all in this together. So while they have a generous welfare state, they impose the burden on the whole society. They have a consumer or value-added tax, the so-called VAT tax, 25% across the board, and that falls more heavily proportionately on the poor and the middle class than it does on the rich. So you won't hear Scandinavians talking about free stuff. I mean, they know stuff isn't free. Who's paying for it? They are. So no American socialist is honest enough to genuinely embrace the Scandinavian socialism, because it means that the guy making $60,000 a year in this country would have to fork over half his taxes, to half his income, to the U.S. government. And
in Sweden, they're paying about 60%, 66% in some cases of their take-home pay. I was having drinks a couple of months ago with a group of friends, one of whom is from Sweden, and he supports socialism. Not the rightest guy in the world, so I won't name him. But when I asked him, I said, well, you're coming from a country that, you know, people are paying 60%. California wants to increase their taxes, and the top marginal rate, with all taxes included, is going to be approximately 67%. And we're seeing the flight from California. Doesn't water always find its own level?
You know, years ago, when I was in the Reagan White House, I was met by, I think, a Finnish doctor. I went out to dinner with him, and at the end of the dinner, I paid, and he looks over and he goes, "American Express Gold Card?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, but you're in your 20s. I go, "Yeah, I know so." And he goes, "I'm a doctor. I can't get a gold card." And I go, "Why not?" He goes, "That's because my income is too low." And I'm like, "You're a doctor." I was really shocked, but it was just a tiny window to me about how things that we take for granted in America, in this case, nothing more than having a credit card, was viewed with sort of envy by a middle-aged professional in the medical profession. It kind of told me that this is really how the Europeans do it. It's not really an example we want to follow.
One of the things that was really poignant to me in your film is the discussion on identity politics. You had an interview with Terrence K. Williams. I've had him on the show. He's a fantastic guy. And, you know, you can't help but be energized being around him. So I'm sure you enjoyed the interview off and on camera.
I grew up in foster care. My mother, she was a single mother. She had 9 children. There were 6 different fathers, and she was addicted to cocaine.
You're natural fodder for the Democratic Party. How did they lose you?
When I was Democrat, I felt like the world owed me everything. You owe me this, you owe me that. Oh, I'm not working for that. But I figured out not working for stuff, you won't get nothing. So I lost that mentality very quick because I realized that if you want something, you have to go out there and get it.
Talk to me about how the left has used identity politics and what you're seeing right now, speaking with folks like Terrence and others that are talking about maybe this massive shift that is taking place under Trump with Black Americans.
So the left has created what I call identity socialism. It's a marriage of socialism and identity politics. Socialism is really about the money. Marx, is an economic thinker. Marx basically says that everything comes out of the economic basis of society. And Marx was all about fomenting and exacerbating a class divide between the rich and the poor. But the left also creates a race divide, black against white, a gender divide, male against female, straight against gay, even an immigration divide, legal versus illegal. So they're all about the politics of division. And what they're saying to you is that the most most important thing about you is the color of your skin, your genital organs, and your immigration status. I think most Americans realize that this is a very truncated, impoverished, narrow way to view us. We're not just the sum total of those things. In fact, most of those things are sort of, well, race is what one scholar called the painted face. How can it possibly determine how you think about things and so on? So the bottom line of it is I think that there's a massive rebellion against this effort to confine us and define us in these narrow ways. Terrence is a very good representative of that. I think Trump is going to make real inroads into both the black and the Latino vote. This is part of why Trump is going to surprise the pollsters on Tuesday, election day.
So talk to me about what we're expecting to see. The polls right now, national polls, which I don't think mean anything anymore. I don't even know why they're used, but they show Biden ahead. But the swing states, the battleground states, they're within the margin of error. It's going to be, really, really close. What are you seeing right now?
Think for a moment who these pollsters are. They're drawn from exactly the same community as academia and the media and the entertainment industry. Bottom line of it is these are people in the advocacy business. And we know from the media and the sort of Biden scandal, they're thoroughly dishonest. They're all about trying to drag this crooked, senile guy over the finish line. And they're going to do whatever they can to try to make that happen. So I think they're trying to use prophecy as a form of advocacy. Oh, because think about it, if Biden wasn't ahead, people would be like, how did you end up with this ridiculous individual as a candidate? They've got to prop him up and make it seem like he's like the emperor who has no clothes. He's winning the race. He's winning the race. And everyone go, wow, he's winning the race, man. So this is a con operation, I think, that the pollsters are trying to pull on the American people. I don't think it's going to work. Look, I'm not in the forecasting business, but the bottom line of it, my instinct tells me Trump is the candidate of prosperity. Trump is the candidate of safety. Trump is also the more interesting, entertaining guy. Who do you want to watch and listen to over the next 4 years? Biden? I mean, a guy in a rocking chair going back and forth and keeling over every now and then. What kind of a president is that of a great country?
He's not going to be around much. I mean, you know he's a Manchurian candidate, is a Trojan horse, and that they've hoisted Kamala upon us, who's the most liberal senator in there. But let's talk a little bit about Biden, because I can't help but compare especially when I watched your movie and I've seen your other films and read some of your books. I can't help compare what we're seeing in the news right now, little in the news, mainstream media isn't covering some of the scandals that we're seeing with Joe Biden. And I think about what you went through. What was it, a $20,000 donation or something ridiculous? And it's actually serving time and dealing with all this. You talk about this in your films. Talk to me a little bit about the hypocrisy we're seeing.
Well, this really shows you that our civics book conception of America is just not true, that there really isn't at the high level equal justice under the law. I mean, my crime was to give $20,000 over the limit of my own money. I didn't benefit in any way. I was trying to help a college friend. And here are my penalties, 8 months in lockup, overnight confinement, mandatory fine, mandatory psychiatric counseling, long term of community service. The whole thing cost me $500,000. And then I look at Biden. Here's a guy who's been raking it in all over the world. And I'm talking about while he's vice president. While he's the point man in Iraq, his family gets a contract to build 100,000 homes in Iraq. While he's point man in Ukraine, Hunter Biden, a crackhead, gets on the board of this energy company in Ukraine. While Biden goes to Costa Rica, Frank Biden, his brother, gets a big contract to make green energy projects in South America. So this is like corruption straight out.
I went to the big guys for the money. I was ready to prostitute myself.
The Bidens have done very well, and Joe Biden's been very sophisticated and shrewd in the way he's done it. He's essentially offshored the corruption.
I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired.
And yet, not only no media coverage, but no investigation. Where's the FBI raid? There were 12 FBI agents on my case alone. I don't see a single FBI agent going up to Joe Biden's front door. So to me, this is outrageous. This shows that these people really, not only are they above the law, but they kind of know they are. That's why Biden can say with a straight face, it's Russian disinformation, because he knows that there are 300 morons in the media who are going to go, yeah, it's Russian disinformation, even though deep down, all those 300 people know he's lying through his teeth.
I would say it's the media, but it's also our institutions now, isn't it, Dinesh? Because you've got people showing up at your door. We saw that with Roger Stone as well. You know, the fact is that these people on the left, they just seem to be able to skate by, and they're not reported about in the media. How much of a concern is that regarding the FBI and the DOJ?
Well, some of this is going to be, it has to be put to Attorney General Barr. It has to be said that it's partly our fault. See, I think the left thinks that we are the party of the namby-pambies, of the nice guys, and therefore they can do to us what we will never do to them. Their view is, listen, we'll go knock down their monuments. Obviously, they're not going to knock down our monuments. We'll pack the court. Obviously, even if they control everything, they would never dream of packing the court. We'll use the deep state against them, because even if they control the government, they would never dream of using the deep state against us. And they think that even though, you know, all this stuff might go back to Hillary, might go right back to Obama. In other words, Obama gave the order. Strzok and Page and Comey and Clapper, they weren't off on independent surveillance expeditions. Obama directed it. But the left's view is you don't have the guts to show up at Obama's house with an indictment and handcuffs. And maybe they're right.
Let's talk about the future here for a minute. We just had a GDP report that came out that showed that fastest pace, fastest increase ever in the history of ever, 33% GDP in the third quarter. Now, obviously, when you fall down to the Mariana Trench of economics, you're going to come back as well. Tell me a little bit about, from your perspective, you went to Dartmouth, you're policy analyst with Reagan, what you see right now for the economy, and are we facing two diverse directions as far as the choice that's going to be made with Election Day?
The important thing about the left is that they don't either understand or care about economic growth. They devote no attention to things like economic incentives. And that's why they talk blithely about 60, 70% tax rates, confiscating businesses. This is what Hugo Chavez did in Venezuela. Expropriate this business, expropriate that. He puts a bunch of socialist pamphleteers, Bernie Sanders types, in charge of PDVSA, the big Venezuelan oil company, runs it into the ground. So this is how the left operates. And look, this is also how government operates. Look at the post office, right? I mean, I have nothing against a postal worker, but it looks to me like if it were just up to the post office, if FedEx didn't exist and if the UPS didn't exist, to this day, they would not have thought of overnight mail, even though the airplane has been around for over 100 years. So there's no innovation, there's no creativity. Now with Trump, it's the opposite. This is a guy who sort of is constantly, and you see this in politics also, he's remaking the realm of the possible. People go, you can't make a deal between Arab countries and Israel unless the Palestinians are involved. Wrong, and wrong and wrong and wrong again. So I think with Trump, there's a certain kind of brilliant creativity to this guy. And it's partly because he just doesn't accept the parameters of the given. Like, this is the wall. You got to walk between these two fence posts. And Trump's question is, why do I have to do that? No, I'm not going to do that. And I think the American people have now seen it. They've seen the result of it. And I think this is actually what's going to carry Trump over the finish line. There's a recognition that this is sort of a new way of doing business in America and a new Republican Party. And I think the American people, and I would include myself in this number, really like what we're seeing.
And it's great numbers, and especially if you're watching the economy closely and you've been concerned about it. I am concerned about the small business sector, and that's probably a discussion for another time. But how much of an impact do you think this is going to have on the race when 70 million plus people have already voted by this time?
Well, I don't think that the fact that people have voted early is the sort of great, boon for the Democrats. Not at all. I do think a lot of people are voting early. I voted early. And so I think that it comes down at the end of the day to how this all stacks up. I'm a little worried about the voter fraud. I think Republicans tend to be a little bit careless about allowing some of this nonsense to go on and then, being helpless at the end. Oh, wow, where'd this wheelbarrow of ballots show up? We got to have a lot of lawyers, a lot of scrutiny, a lot of eyes on the ball. And if you don't do it, you're letting the other side, again, run away with it. Once again, the left thinks we can do voter fraud. The conservatives aren't going to do it on their side. So this is a one-way, the kind of gangsterization of the Democratic Party has been based on the idea that the GOP is not going to do anything about it. This is why it's vitally important in the second term we crack up the deep state, we smash digital censorship, we take on these things in all seriousness because our long-term future depends on it.
Do you think there's a phrase going around right now, we're about to enter into 71 days of hell or whatever it is, right? Between November the 4th and Inauguration Day. It's going to be just litigation everywhere. Do you expect that, or do you think this is going to be a fairly swift decision?
I think it's going to be a fairly swift decision, but I'm worried about a different kind of upheaval, which is the left has been coddled into thinking they've got it in the bag. So if we lose, we will shrug our shoulders and go, this is terrible, this is unfortunate, we've got to rally, we've got to reorganize. But if they lose, they will go berserk. They'll be like, how could we lose? And so they're going to kind of go nuts. I already see on social media these sort of Antifa sites, get ready to cause havoc and so on. So I think we have to sort of toughen ourselves up for all this. And recognize that going berserk is not a solution to an election. In fact, think of how chillingly similar this would be to like 1860, when a Republican gets elected in a fair election and gets an electoral majority, the other side goes berserk. So once again, the Democrats, I think, are gangsterized. The reason I draw analogies, even in the movie Trump Card with Lincoln, is we're not in a Reagan moment. That was a Cold War against a foreign opponent. We are in a cold civil war against a domestic opponent.
How do you answer that when these cities are run by Democrat mayors, many of whom don't crack down on these looters? We just saw it this week with Philadelphia.
That's because they are in cahoots with them. You know, these aren't ordinary paramilitaries or street gangs. It's very much like Mussolini in the 20s. I mean, the black shirts they were adjuncts of a political party. Someone was egging them on. Somebody was supporting them. Now, very interestingly, when Mussolini came to power, he sort of shut down the black shirts. Why? Because he imported them into the state. You don't need the black shirts when you have the police and you have the military. Hitler came to the same conclusion. He literally disbanded the brown shirts because he goes, I got the German army. And so what you see with Antifa, with Black Lives Matter, is that there are people strategically helping them, putting the bricks for them to throw, supplying bail money for them. They have media allies. They go, listen, I'm about to break a window. Turn your camera away. Okay, sure. They've also got powerful friends in the mayor's office in Seattle, in Portland, in Berkeley, in New York City. So these are thugs with friends in high places. And this is important to realize. They are accessories. They are an extension of the Democratic left.
You know, in your film Trump Card, you talk about the expose of socialism, corruption, and you call it the gangsterization of the Democratic Party. Is that what you're referring to here?
Yes, but I'm referring to the gangsterization not just at the street level, but also at the deep state level. We feature George Papadopoulos. I mean, think about it. You've got this young guy in his 20s. All he wants to do is get a job in the White House. He joins the campaign. He's in Europe. He thinks he's a big shot. But all these diabolical deep state characters, and I don't just mean Americans, Australians, Englishmen, people who are part of the Western intelligence apparatus, are planting information on this kid with the view that he'll send an email to the Trump campaign, guess what I found? And then boom, they've got him on conspiracy. And more importantly, they've got Trump implicated in a conspiracy case. So this is actually, I would say, you know, this is sort of wickedness at the James Bond level. And it's the thugs with badges are more dangerous than the thugs on the street.
Jeez, that's scary stuff. And I don't know who the character would be. Who plays Blofeld? Is that Soros?
Well, these guys, they've got a lot of people who are part of this operation. I mean, just think of this latest thing with Tucker Carlson. You know, he mailed some documents to LA. They're intercepted on the way. Now, who has that kind of power? Who could pull that off?
I saw that last night, and then I read somewhere that Fox News themselves actually has a copy. And what is that? I mean, what are we looking at here? Is it like that there's actually instigators within the Fox News network themselves?
I don't know, but I do know that this is bombshell stuff because you've got an outsider, someone who was brought in by the family. You know, this is actually like Pantangeli in The Godfather. You know, he's connected with the family. He was there. He has the documents. He has the texts. And so the fact that the media isn't covering this, the same people who covered the Russia dossier, I mean, what a shameful performance by the mainstream media. I don't think we'll look at them the same way again. We don't really have a media in the normal sense. So I think if Trump gets reelected, kick all those guys out of the press room. They're frauds. They're not media. They're not journalists. Bring in a whole new group of people that can actually earn the public trust.
Yeah, I'd love to get your, do you have another minute? Because I know we're...
I do. Yeah,
okay.
Sure.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that, because you refer to the corruption in your film Trump Card. And what we've been seeing just in the past week with Bobulinski coming out, more people watched Tucker Carlson's long-form interview the other night than I think in record of cable news. It was like almost 8 million viewers, okay? Talk to me a little bit about that, because we're seeing somebody, as you just correctly stated, that was on the inside of the Biden family. He was basically their go-to guy, and he's come out against them. It's not been reported anywhere. It's like 0.0 minutes in the mainstream media has been dedicated to this. Talk a little bit about that chapter.
Yes. If you think about it, it is a very difficult feat to pull off, because these are competitive industries. So you have journalism, you have hundreds of journalists, thousands really, working for many different outlets. You have competitive pressure to get the story out. So you would think that the market would drive someone to go, I'm at USA Today. These idiots don't want to cover the story. Great, I'll have the story all to myself. I'll jump on it and I'll get all the attention. No. So think of the level of cooperation plus intimidation that there has to be, that every reporter who would dream of covering this story goes, my boss is going to kill it. And he's going to then turn around and kill me, which is to say, kill my future. So I don't dare to go there. There's not a single journalist in a major outlet that dares to cover this story, the biggest story of the election. I mean, I don't know. This would almost be like the entire medical profession in public denial over COVID. It would literally destroy the profession overnight. Because people are dropping dead of it, and every doctor in the country is denying it. This would be laughable. You couldn't even maintain a straight face with this, and yet it's going on in the media. So we covered this in Trump Card. We talk about a sexual allegation against Obama. Now, again, most reporters are scared to go there. Therefore, I go there, and I put it right up there. But the point I'm trying to make is every unverified accusation against Trump has gotten acres and acres of coverage. Here's a bombshell accusation against Obama. It's not just a sex accusation. It involves a man in Jeremiah Wright's church who claimed to have an affair with Obama, who was gunned down, whose mother accused Obama directly and the Obama people of having killed her son. So there's a preview right there of the way in which Obama was protected. And this kind of a preview of how the press is now trying to protect Joe Biden.
The silence is just deafening, and it really is scary to me how much control. We saw the the Senate hearings this week with Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg. They're talking about the 320s. You know, they say that the ones who control the information control the people, right? This is Orwellian, what we're seeing right now. And go ahead.
It shows you long-term, we have to build new educational institutions, new media, new entertainment, have our own comedians. All of this is important because I think this is a more widespread problem than media. In academia, for example, I've been really struck by the degree of sort of outright cover-up and lying that goes on. I mean, professors who just won't tell their students that the Ku Klux Klan had any affiliation with the Democratic Party. You know, there's no textbook in the country that will point out that of the 4 million slaves in 1860, approximately 10 were owned by Republicans, and most of the rest, there were a few other parties involved, but the vast majority of the rest were owned by Democrats. In other words, slavery really wasn't a sort of bipartisan or, quote, American problem. Slavery was actually the economic and political unifying point of the Democratic Party in the North and the South. But I defy you to show me that on Wikipedia or the History Channel or the textbooks. So what we've seen is that our faith in these institutions, our kind of naive civics book faith, academia, the smart professors, the media, we're getting the news, the FBI, these are neutral, untouchables types who go after Al Capone. No, 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 no. We've just got to open our eyes to the fact that these institutions have become corrupted. The fish is rotted from the head. And all of this is on the ballot in November.
Aish, are you optimistic?
You know, my temperament is that way. And I think a big country is not that easy to ruin. There's an old saying that God looks out for drunks, little children, and the United States of America. So I have a certain kind of confidence that America will pull through, but I don't think it will pull through without us. We're part of the reason it will pull through, and we've got to be all hands to the wheel.
Everybody check out Trump Card, Dinesh D'Souza's latest film, and what you were just talking about also regarding the big switch, you know, regarding slavery and the education that our kids aren't getting regarding the actual history of the Democrat Party. I believe that was The Big Lie, your movie?
Well, it's in the movie called Death of a Nation, which is based on the book The Big Lie.
Yes,
so the books typically have the references, the chapter and verse, but the movies create an emotional narrative out of it. So either one is a good way to get the facts.
Yeah, and that's when I saw you last and your beautiful family at the red carpet event for Death of the Nation, which is also a great film. You can find them all. Tell everybody where to find your films and your books, please.
Well, my website, DineshD'souza.com, is kind of a good way to go. For Trump Card, go to TrumpCardTheMovie.com because it links you directly to places you can get the DVD. And it's on Vudu, Fandango, it's on YouTube, Apple iTunes, so a lot of different platforms. I prefer you watch it on the big screen TV because I made it for the big screen. Yeah. But hey, if you can
it's
watch
a beautiful
it on any
film.
device.
It's a beautiful, beautiful film. I mean, the cinematography of her films is just getting better and better. It's done really well. You got some great music. Was that your wife singing?
Yeah, that's my wife singing America the Beautiful, and it's so haunting. I mean, a lot of people have told me they were like reduced to tears at the end. So I like my movies. They have a horror component to get frightened along the way, but I think in the end, I try to make them very inspirational and motivational, and this one is no exception.
Dinesh, thank you so much for sharing your time with us so close to the election. I wish you nothing but success with your film, Trump Card, and I know you're not done making films and writing books, so we're looking forward to the next one.
Thank you very much. Hey, I appreciate it.
Take care, Dinesh. Thanks, Dinesh. Greatly appreciate you taking the time. And also to you, our viewers, for watching or listening, whatever platform you may be watching or listening to us on. I'm going to ask you a favor, folks. Please share the interview. If you enjoyed it, that is, give us a rating at iTunes or subscribe to us on YouTube, comment. You can find us on Ricochet as well. Whiskey politics is being throttled. I posted something up on Twitter last week, a report that we found. Our YouTube channel has been rather stagnant and static for quite some time. You know, they are holding back conservative voices, or who they consider conservative voices. We've had some fantastic guests. You know, Dinesh, I think, is episode 264. I mean, you know, we've had a fantastic number of really great guests. If you missed our recent interview with Ted Cruz, Marsha Blackburn, last week we just had Matt Timron, who broke the story about Hunter Biden's emails. You know, we are getting really fantastic people and trying to spread the news out there so that you don't have these mind-numb robots that are just accepting what they're learning and hearing from the mainstream news. You know, recent reports have come out showing that approximately 67% of people get their news from social media. That's over 2/3, okay? 67% of people getting their news from social media means that many of us are living in an echo chamber. And you see that when you go on Twitter or Facebook, that the response that the left have over what the right are putting up as factual stories or whatever it may be is vitriolic. It's insulting. You know, they call you names. And I know that there's some people that do that on the right, you know, for the left as well. But the fact is that we're not talking with each other. We're talking at each other. And the reason that whiskey politics exists, and, you know, we started whiskey politics in the election season of 2016. The name Whiskey Politics, the idea was that I wanted to have long-form discussion. There was only a couple of people doing it at the time, right? And Joe Rogan, Dave Rubin was just starting up. We had Rubin on a couple of months ago. And there were very, very few people that were sitting down and having these long-form discussions so that you weren't just relying upon the screaming talking heads in the boxes, you know, on your local news or on CNN or Fox. And you know, there's some good people that are out there that are fighting the cause that get invited onto these channels. I've been invited onto many of these channels as well. I was on OANN a couple of weeks ago talking about the economy. But the thing is that you're given 3 minutes, you're given 4 minutes. And I'm sorry, but the contextual aspect of what we're talking about goes much, much deeper than the talking points that could fit in 240 characters on Twitter, which is in essence what CNN, Fox, or MSNBC are giving us. They are the tweet versions of talking heads. So Whiskey Politics was created with the idea that we could sit down. In some cases, I have people, left of center people, I have scientists, we have poker players, we have people from Hollywood. Obviously, lately, it's a lot about politics because we're in the middle of the election. I've had people from, the sciences talking about weather. And the idea is, let's sit down and have a glass of whiskey. Can't really do it right now because we're not sitting down with people. Because of COVID. But, the idea was that we can sit down and have a discussion. Let's sit down and have a debate and have a discussion and stop throwing out epithets at each other as we're doing on Twitter. We are so angry. As I said, it's like our raw nerve endings are exposed right now. And don't think that this is going to end when the election has come and gone. Two things are going to happen. A, it's going to be contested, it's going to be elongated, and the left will never, ever accept a Trump victory. I'm telling you right now. And I know this because of history. I know this because I thought in 2012, like many conservatives, I voted for Romney. I thought Romney was going to win. I truly believed it. I felt it. Maybe that's not a good thing because I feel Trump's going to win. But I truly believed it. And I remember watching the returns coming in. I remember 2012. It's only 8 years ago. And I thought to myself, holy cow, Virginia is taking way too long. That's not a good sign. But what did we do as conservatives when Romney lost? We sat down. We had a drink or two, right? We commiserated with each other. We stood up, we dusted ourselves off, and we went on with our lives. We decided that, okay, this is the election. We'll go on and get them in 2014, in 2016, in 2018. And that's what normal people do. Well, 2016 came, and it never went for the Democrats. They have been living for 4 years in this perpetual state of rage. This perpetual, very unhealthy level of anger. It's cancerous. And it never dissipated. It hasn't been reduced. If you've gone online any time in the past 4 years, and I know most people do, the anger has just been continuing to fester and bubble up. And so what's going to happen on Wednesday and Thursday and whenever the full returns come in, and we may not know in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania for a week, but what is going to happen if Trump, which I do believe, and again, I could be wrong. Nobody knows. I'm not Nostradamus here, but I'm going with my gut, which was wrong in 2012. But I'm saying that Trump wins. I'm saying we add a seat or two in the Senate. I'm saying there is a hidden Trump voter that hasn't been in any way accounted in the polls. Again, I could be wrong, but that's my belief. What will the left do? First of all, we can expect violence. We can expect riots. Beverly Hills and New York City and Chicago are battening down the hatches as we speak right now. They're putting plywood on stores, on Saks Fifth Avenue, on Toomey luggage in Beverly Hills. Okay? They don't trust that people are going to accept the results. And when I say people, the left, because the right are not going to riot. We'll be angry, we'll be disappointed, we'll fight it because of the election fraud, but you're not going to see pitchforks and torches in the streets, okay? This is what the left does. This is their domain. They act out, they emote. So I'm just going to suggest everybody take a deep breath. We probably will not know the results on Tuesday night, probably not Wednesday morning, maybe not for a few days, maybe a couple of weeks. I don't know. Just hold your breath. Hopefully we will know. And that means one of two things are going to happen, that there is such an overwhelming victory for one of the candidates, hopefully President Trump for the future of our country, okay, that it's unquestionable. But that doesn't mean that the popular vote is going to go for Trump. California and New York make that almost impossible today. I think a poll recently just came out in the last week regarding California. It showed something like 63% of Californians intend to vote for Biden. Okay, even with the heavy-weighted Democrat polling that is out there. Okay, so let's say it's 55% or something along those lines. All right. Yeah, I know, Dave, but there have been parades and there's been Trump rallies and every week, and there has been. And I've seen people standing on overpasses randomly on a Tuesday night. I was driving to my buddy's house to watch the World Series, and there were, on a Tuesday evening, there were people on the overpass with Trump flags. I haven't seen this before, and I'm seeing no bumper stickers. Okay, when was the last time you didn't see any bumper stickers 5, 3, 4 days before an election? Okay, something is happening, and there is a hidden Trump vote. So I'm thinking that there is a possibility that this could be an overwhelming victory. But the popular vote, because of California and New York, it's going to go for Biden. That's just math, unfortunately. So take a deep breath. We're going to get through this period as well. The second this is over, if Democrats lose, they're focused on 2022. The election cycle never ends anymore. The election cycle never ends. The machine continues. There are candidates that are perpetual candidates. Many of them are grifters, quite frankly, on the left and the right, I will say. They just live on campaign donations. That's their job. And so they will continue. And we will continue. But after this is over, this election is over, Rodney King, can't we just get along? I've got left of center friends of mine that I don't talk to right now. I can't deal with it. I don't want to deal with their politics. And I know they don't want to deal with mine. And so I'm hoping that whatever the results are of this election, that we can in some way break bread again with those that we politically disagree with. Didn't we used to do that? Wasn't that the norm? Weren't we able to hang out and watch sporting events or go out for dinner or play poker with our buddies that may be politically, on the other side of the aisle from us? We crack a couple of jokes and then we talk about other things. We talk about movies and concerts and sports. So let's try for that, shall we? Because I am deeply concerned how us as a culture and as a humanity are barreling towards some kind of cold civil war. I know there are people that are saying it's going to be a hot civil war. No, I don't think we're going to be grabbing guns on the streets. The Antifa idiots don't represent the left in the same way that, you see these militia idiots in Michigan representing the right. Okay? The 80% majority, to coin a phrase my friend Ken Emmons came up with, the 80% majority is 40% around the middle on each side. Many of us are in that 20% around the middle. We're right of center or we're left of center. Many of us will agree with certain things that the other party that they don't vote for stands for. Libertarians want government out of your pocket and your bedroom. We can agree on things. We can disagree on things. We could philosophically have arguments and disagreements about economics. But we have to be able to talk with each other, not at each other. And I implore you, some of our viewers are virulent on social media, and I appreciate that energy and I appreciate your passion. But you shouldn't be ending relationships with family members. You shouldn't end lifelong friendships, because at the end of the day, I hate that cliche, but it's true. When this is all said and done, another cliche, we are a shared humanity. Okay? We watch the same films, we shop at the same supermarkets, we work out at the same gyms, we climb the same trails or go to the same beaches. We're fellow human beings, and we all want the same things. We want to be healthy. We want shelter. We want food. We want peace, no war. We want a good economy. And we want to sit down and break bread and laugh with each other, because that ultimately, at the end of the day, is what is healthy for us. All right, folks, with that being said, greatly appreciate you being here. If you're enjoying the show, please share it. Give us a like, give us a comment, whatever platform you're watching or listening to us on. And we'll see you post-election 2020. Keep your fingers crossed, hold your breath, and exercise and work out and eat well over the next few days, folks, because we're all going to be exhausted. Cheers, everybody.